Hey guys, welcome to the
The
RC.
show that's not about rogue crocodiles, because we only have... How many teeth does a human have?
I don't know.
I think
I'm
it's
not a
32.
dentist. I definitely think
Alright,
it's more
hold
than
on.
32.
What?
No,
Oh,
don't.
alright.
Do not count them.
This is the show where we talk about random stuff, Catholic media, dating, relationships. We're insane, we're crazy, and
We're nerdy.
we're tired. So you can relate to us, viewers. Thank you. If you watched last week's episode, we greatly appreciate it. We actually haven't put it out yet. We're recording this beforehand, so if you hated it and we're doing this for nothing,
Let us know.
I don't know why this is up. Thank you, though, for watching. If you want to subscribe, make sure you subscribe if you're listening on Spotify. We love you. You're an amazing person. Rachel, how are you this week?
I'm doing pretty good this week. I'm pretty good. Just got done prepping for midterms, so in need of a vacation.
I feel that.
People joke about, but when you're in school, in college particularly, like, it's hard to go 10 weeks straight and just go, because it's, I mean, you do a lot. You can do a lot in 10 weeks.
I already hear comments saying, like, wow, you entitled millennials, how dare you not understand how you need to work hard, you have no work ethic. We have a work ethic. We work hard. That's why we want a vacation. I was actually looking at the other day flights to Hawaii because of how bored I was.
Also, I have a friend who's there.
Yeah, because we're going to be stuck in houses for a week still in California. So we're not going to talk about that because that's the worst thing. Instead, I have a question for you pertaining to stress.
Distress?
Yes.
Okay.
So when you were a child.
Yes. Was there a time? I don't know.
Back when you weren't stressed. So Saturday morning cartoon land. You remember that? Watching Saturday morning cartoons, watching Boomerang, and your parents and in the basement, being all quiet while you're eating cereal on the floor and your parents are still asleep. You remember those good old days?
Yeah.
Back when we had no responsibilities.
A great time.
The perfect days. How was you? What do you think as a writer, as your catchphrase goes? What is nostalgia? First off, like, are you big into nostalgia? Do you think it's helpful? What are you nostalgic about? And like, do you think people should keep doing like reboots and remakes and stuff that really just applies? Just, oh look, we're doing another Tom and Jerry live action remake. Like, do you nostalgia? Your thoughts? Your likes, your fears, your hatreds.
I'm very nostalgic, just kind of by nature, but it's more with like things pertaining to events. So, like, I'll be super nostalgic about a playbill from a musical I went to see because I love musicals and like the experience of it is a big deal to me. So I keep like all those playbills. Or like if I go on a trip and I get like a necklace or I get a t-shirt or whatever, I don't want to throw it away even if like I don't wear it that often.
Yeah.
So it tends to be oriented towards experiences for nostalgia for me personally. But yeah, I mean, I grew up watching cartoons a little bit in the morning, mostly when I was only at my grandparents' house. My brother and I would watch Boomerang at my grandparents' house when we would stay with them. And that was really the only time we watched like a lot of cartoons that weren't like Disney. Like I grew up, I was a Disney kid. I mean, I watched Nickelodeon.
What were your go-to Okay, Disney. Back to tying the topic in. With Disney, they do a lot of. Also, I do have this is the part where I'm going to apologize to everyone because we thought the dishwasher wouldn't be that loud, but we're too into it to stop now. So sorry about that. If you can't hear it, you don't know what I'm talking about. Awesome, I am great.
If you can hear it, we're really sorry.
There's a lot. There have been 3 Cinderella cartoons. There have been 2 Ariels.
Yes.
Do you think that Disney kept going on to kind of continue our topic from last week? Like, there have been how many Scooby-Doo films? There have been how many Tom and Jerry movies?
Yeah.
There have been how many? Like, they keep making things over and over that are popular, but I feel like they mostly play on nostalgia. Now, granted, I am not somebody who has studied writing, nor am I a writer. So what are your thoughts on the continued, like, making wow, that was an awful sound. Making things that are basically just nostalgia bait, you could say, for a film.
I think it's okay if you do respect to the original. So like I loved the Cinderella movies. I loved all of them. I'm the weird one who is very, very nostalgic about Disney movies. So I like am obsessed with all the live actions that have been happening. Mostly because most of them are highly nostalgic. I haven't seen Dumbo or Lady and the Tramp. I'm not really into them, so I don't know about those ones. But I feel like it's okay to play on it if you do it out of respect and not just, we want you to be nostalgic, so we're going to put the same name on the movie, but it's going to be totally different. Like, you have to have a balance, because I think you can play on nostalgia, but you can't just remake the same movie either. Like, in Beauty and the Beast, things were changed, because that one's my favorite.
And it was good.
It was really good.
They added a whole extra song, and it was the best song in the music.
They added multiple extra songs.
Wait,
and they added, like, backstories, Days in the Sun, and Evermore.
I completely forgot about Days in the Sun.
And, like, they changed some words, and they just played it in, I think, a really strong way where it was still the same story, but it felt a little bit new. And I think that that's the important thing, is that if you're going to play on nostalgia, don't just create the same story.
Make it respectful.
Do nostalgia so that you can add a story to the existing stories. Like, if you're going to make, like, a Scooby-Doo, don't remake the first What's New Scooby-Doo movie, or don't make
Spider-Man, don't have Uncle Ben die again.
Yeah, I'm kind of sick of watching Uncle Ben die.
So the movie we watched the other day that I felt had a lot of nostalgia, but you ranted about, was Little Women, the new remake with...
Yes.
I was about to say, like, one of the leads' names, but, like, all of them deserve attention. The movie was, I thought, was incredible, great lead cast, and it really touched on a lot of things you said last week about your conversation about feminism in film.
Oh, yeah.
But it was very nostalgic. It felt very, very old school.
It's very, very interesting, because I was a big fan of the book, but I have not liked any of the movies. I have never liked any.
How many have there been? There's been the one with Winona Ryder.
4 or 5. No, there's 5.
Really?
So there was one in the 20s, one in the 30s or 40s, the one with Winona Ryder in 1994, and then there was one in 2018 that was, like, completely not.
Was it like a direct-to-DVD BBC, or?
No, it was just like, no, I don't know what it
PBS.
Was, but I was told it was bad, so I didn't see it.
This one.
But this one,
did it do justice? Was it respectful?
So
was it good
as someone who was a fan of the book, I loved the tie-ins. I think nostalgia relies on how do you tie in the original into something that feels new. And in this movie in particular, what I liked was that they jump between kind of the first and the second half of the book. So the book is kind of split into 2 parts, where there's kind of a jump in time. But I liked that they bounced back and forth, because I think that you really understand the whole of the story. It wasn't just I think what made the movie nostalgic was that it wasn't just, let's retell the story, let's literally just make the book. They intentionally made it so that it was Jo March, the second older sister, the one that's the writer, writes the book Little Women, and is heavily just, like, mirrored with Louisa May Alcott, who is the writer. She's awesome. And I thought that it was really cool, because obviously, like, the book is a little related to her, and the story is obviously a little bit of her story. But I liked that they made it so that the book was Jo's, and it creates a really cool dynamic that feels nostalgic, because they're things that only someone who's a fan would know.
Yeah.
I think that's what really makes something nostalgic, like a remake, is if it's done for the fans. Nostalgia can't be done for, like, to, get a whole new generation involved, because they're not nostalgic. They don't have any connection to it. Nostalgia entirely has to be, like, a fan thing,
So I got really loud. So with nostalgia, right, and that whole concept, I think there's a lot of things that can work, but I feel like a lot of companies are really... And it's fine to delve back into your old IPs. I think that's a great way to bring back some old content, stuff.
Especially if it's good content.
Oh, yeah. Like, I want a Wacky Racers live action movie. If you know what Wacky Racers in, I am very proud of you. I want a bunch of I want, as opposed to, like, for example, the Yogi Bear movie, which I'm pretty sure ended multiple people's careers. It
should have.
It was so bad. But it did pay homage, and it very much felt like it was for the fans. It just felt like everything that they thought the fans liked, they they got wrong every single part.
Well, you still have to have a story. You can't just be like, let's just throw all the references that the fans will get into a movie.
And that's what I feel like often happens with these nostalgia bait films. Correct me if I'm wrong. That it often seems like they're like, okay, well, what did you like about Power Rangers? Giant mechs fighting. Okay, well, yes, but also there are other. Power Rangers was a bad example. I've never seen an episode of Power Rangers. Please don't crucify me in the comments.
Don't worry, fans. I will. I grew up on Power Rangers.
Jurassic Park is a good example.
Yeah.
What did people like about the original Jurassic Park? Running from large dinosaurs. What did they include? But it's like the main element. What did they include in Jurassic World? Running from large dinosaurs. But there was a story around the main element. And I feel like a lot of movies are just taking the main elements and are just throwing them at a wall and saying, stick, make us money, without including a great story.
So what do you think then of, like, let's say that there's a movie and, you know, like, what would you do with a movie where it's like, oh yeah, you have to tell the story, the same story as, like, let's say it's the first Tom and Jerry movie, right? You have to literally just retell that story, but in a creative way.
I would look at every instance of Peter Pan. The Peter Pan story has been told 500 million times.
True.
And 90% of them are uncreative, but the 10% that are fantastic. Now, granted, some of them are in the same like world or general universe. For example, Hook with Robin Williams. I think some people don't like it, but you can admit at least that it is well done. Like it doesn't just rehash the same old story.
It's Robin Williams, so I can't say anything bad about it. I mean, yeah, it takes a different approach to it, and
that's one element. That's one way you can do it, right? And I think it's not a cop out, but it's a good way of doing it.
It's like almost like we're gonna be in the same universe, but we're gonna tell you a different story.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to do it.
I think it works. It isn't the most original, but it works if you want to play a little bit. If you only want to dab into the nostalgic feeling, like if you're just like we just want to take a little bit, and we just want to
nostalgia.
We just want to dip it in there. I think then that's fine.
But you need to do something new. You can't just copy and paste. So even if it's animated to live action, sometimes it'll work. Sometimes I thought the live action Jungle Book was cool because it took the main components of the story, beat by beat by beat. But it changed up the visual element and it added and it played with it. It wasn't just like, look, guys, they're cool now, which is what The Lion King did, and why I didn't like The Lion King at all, because all it did was say,
our Queen Beyonce sang in that
Beyonce was
movie.
incredible. The voice acting was insane.
The voice acting was
But
really
here's
good.
the problem. They said, we're going to take pretty much the exact same thing from the original animated, which, don't get me wrong, iconic, incredible. We're going to throw in a little sprinkle of things from the Broadway, and then we're just going to do nothing. It was cool. It was a nice addition, but that wasn't enough of an addition to make it seem new, because a remake or a nostalgia bait movie has to have something new. I think the new Aladdin kind of did it, but it did it in ways that I personally didn't like, so I'm not gonna say. But I think that's really what you need to do, is you need to have something that is in the, because if you can't change the plot and you can't change who are we focusing on, you have to change something about the visual element and maybe tweak it so that it becomes something new in playing with the medium. Like, I don't think you can remake Mrs. Doubtfire. I don't know, I'm stuck on Robin Williams movies, because first off, that can't get remade today because it's really weird if you watch that movie again.
That is not.
How come Pierce Brosnan is the bad guy, but like all he's wanting to do is be a good stepdad?
Yeah, when you think about it, those kind of movies, there's certain movies in the past that when you watch them, you're genuinely amazed that they got made, but then you remember that things aren't like they were back then. Like one of my favorite
Are you about to talk about
one of my favorite movies
No.
is called Murder by Death. It is a spoof movie.
It's on Amazon Prime.
It's interesting.
We can't recommend it.
We can't recommend it, but I also can't recommend it enough. It's literally just a play on Agatha Christie. All the stereotypes of all of her detectives. And I love Agatha Christie, so I was totally into it. But it was made in
67 or something.
I thought it was 79.
Maybe
it's 60s or 70s. The point is they got away with a lot of things that are somewhat racially insensitive. Racially insensitive.
Not nice.
Gender insensitive. There's a lot of it's just
It's an interesting way of doing
crazy.
nostalgia because it's
It
taking
is.
concepts then and throwing them into a different
Or
thing.
like spoofing them. I think taking
Spoofs, I think, are a whole different thing. I don't think those can be
you
nostalgic,
don't
can
think
they?
you don't think a spoof can be nostalgic?
I don't. I think.
I think it can, because I think it can play off of it in a humorous way, the nostalgia. So like, you could take a show that was super, super funny, and if you just blow up a few of the jokes and you just make the characters even wilder, it could clearly be a spoof, or they could even be like the world around them could be in complete opposition of them, making it incredibly humorous and spoof material, but not change the characters too much. And I think that could maybe
I don't
count.
think it can be nostalgia is the problem. Like when I think about like spoof or meta, I love meta TV shows. Like
Yeah, you do.
I just both started and almost am finished watching Community, and despite people complaining about it, I think all 6 seasons are incredible. I'm wrong. That's fine.
I
Call
won't
me
watch
wrong. But I like the fact that it's basically a spoof off of a lot of pre-established tropes with things like The Office, Parks and Rec. Actually, I think Parks and Rec was established afterwards. What's the one spoof like Scary Movie, like a movie that's completely just making fun of horror films. I think it's hysterical. I don't think it can be nostalgic, because to be nostalgic it has to play upon okay, no, it can be, but it won't be a good nostalgia, because I feel like nostalgia has to be good.
Do you think nostalgia has to be good, or do you think it has to respect the original material? Because I feel like in spoof you don't really
I don't think it has to respect,
respect.
but I don't
the
think it was like,
original.
oh man, I have nostalgia about really crappy lunch cafeteria pizza. That's not nostalgia, that's PTSD.
Well, then I got a lot of that. I had some great cafeteria pizza in high school. I'm kidding. But yeah, no, I think nostalgia is difficult. I think it's different for everybody, because everyone's going to be sensitive, Everyone's going to have a problem with it. Everyone's got a problem with Beauty and the Beast. Everyone's got a problem with Aladdin. Everyone's got a problem with The Lion King. Like, we're still on Disney. Everyone's got a problem with basically every remake that's existed, because I guess then you have to question, is it a remake? So is it just the same thing but made with better costumes, better, like all the Little Women movies leading up to this one? I think this one's the only one that really wasn't a remake. This one really felt quite original compared to the other ones.
Yeah.
But I think you have to debate what's the difference between a remake, so something that is literally the same, it's intended to be the same, it's just got a few differences, or something that's nostalgic where I think it respects the original but it's different.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where you have to wonder, like, where does something sit, because people will always have an issue with it, and people will be nostalgic about different things. But I think that's what separates it, is that in a remake I think there's less of a nostalgic feel, because it's just the same story, unless it's done like, for me, Beauty and the Beast was highly, highly nostalgic, because they did change a lot of the interactions. Some of the portrayals I thought were a little bit more solid. And it felt like the same story, but it also felt like something new.
So this is something I think is really interesting in video gaming, is that there's the concept of like a remake versus a remaster, right? Like a remaster is, we're going to update the visuals, the audio, that kind of stuff, and make it seem like a new game, as opposed to a remake where they're adding things in. They're not really telling a different story. They're like saying the same game, like the original New Super Mario versus New Super Mario Brothers. Actually, the example that everyone will know, first Mario Kart versus Mario Kart Wii. That would be a remake, I would say, of the original Mario Kart. Argue with me all you want. I know Double Dash is the best. Okay, whatever. But, Wii is my favorite. It's the same. It's like the same general concept, but they're bringing in new elements. They can throw in nostalgic stuff, but they're bringing in new elements to create something. Is there something like that? Do you think that distinction in? Obviously, there is, like what you're describing, but do you think that's kind of a similar difference? Being we're just going to update the concept of what it is, even though the new Little Women shot on film, versus we're going to completely just chop frame by frame remake, or not even frame by frame, but like just remake the exact same thing.
I definitely think that it really exists in any sort of entertainment or personal media thing. So I think it can exist in video games. I think it can exist in movies. I think it can exist in television shows. You have shows like Hawaii Five-0, where they did the show several years ago, and I'm not sure when the original series went, But it was really, really entertaining. And then it ended, and then in the early 2000s they started it again, and it's the same scenario, but it's and vaguely the same characters, but it's such a different way and portrayal of the characters, and it's such a different approach to them, that I think that's what makes it something that's new, is that you can take something and you can just go, all right, this is what it was, this is what it is, make it again.
So if you had to remake something,
If I had to remake anything,
TV show, what would you
I had to
remake?
remake a TV show.
You have to remake or you have to bring back a TV show.
Ooh. Okay, so there's one that I want, but I know most people won't know it, so I should probably pick something
What is
else.
it? They may.
I love Castle. It is, well, there's two actually, and they're both Nathan Fillion shows. It's either Castle, which is about a mystery detective writer who begins following around a homicide detective as she becomes the new muse for his newest book. And I love that show. I watched it. It starred Nathan Fillion, and he's iconic. And it was so funny. And I related to it because I loved mysteries. I love homicide detective shows. And I'm a writer.
Let's stick with that one. How would you redo it? What would you do? How would you, like, giving people a practical example, how do you take the original established content and turn it into something that's new without having to rehash the entire show for people so that people could get into it?
See, that's the hard part that I actually don't know, because I don't know where you could go forward with it. The show had a pretty solid ending. They pretty much like just ended it. So I wouldn't say that you could be like, oh yeah, they're still at it, going on adventures and solving homicide mysteries, solving murders. I think you would have to take a new approach to it. So either you would have to do something where it's like something in the same universe, maybe, where it's like, oh yeah, this is the same thing, and you bring in some of the old characters, maybe it's the precinct 5 years later, and some of the characters are still there, and you pull in different ones and pull some out, and I think that's kind of a creative way to do it, because you get to remain in the universe, but it means you get new characters, which new characters always have new approaches to things.
But then do you even call it Castle, or do you just make your own thing? I think that's
you have
really
to
the
make
problem.
it your own thing. That's the hard part. If it was a show like Scooby-Doo, I love Scooby-Doo. I think you could do it, because that's had so many renditions already, and that one's fairly open-ended. I think a lot of modern shows you couldn't do it.
They're just in high school since 1969, solving mysteries.
Yep, their ages confuse me. I don't know how old they are. The live-action movies confused me even more. I don't know.
Well, I think it's because most of the actors were in their 30s, and they were supposed to be playing like 17-year-olds.
Anyways, so the ageless, timeless Scooby-Doo Mystery Inc. gang of people. I think you could remake that show because it's fairly open-ended. I could do a live action of Scooby-Doo, and all I would have to do is include the characters and write a bunch of new mysteries. I could do it where, it's... I wouldn't even have to really explain how they got together, because no one does. I could literally just put them together, and just like, it's how it's always been. And I think when a show's open-ended like that, especially a lot of kids' Saturday morning cartoons are like
Scooby-Doo.
that. They're so open-ended because they didn't know how long they were going to last. They were just like, we'll just let this keep going till it can't go anymore.
I'm pretty sure Scooby-Doo eventually they're like, we're going to be reigning forever.
They're still reigning. They're reigning my wallet. Trust me. But no, I think that's a good way to see it. Is kind of like, if you have a show that's like that, it induces nostalgia to begin with. Mm-hmm. I'm 21 and I'm binging Scooby-Doo on the Boomerang app because I love it. And I still love it, even though I am definitely smarter than the characters in the show. And I can figure out the mysteries, and I've seen them all, and I'll still sit there and watch them all. Because there's just this feeling of this is something that I know, and it's good.
Yeah.
And I think with a show, let's say like Castle or like any kind of modern TV show, I don't think you can really remake it or, continue it, because many of them have a very clear beginning and a very clear end. and it just doesn't work like it does with those old ones.
So Saturday morning cartoons.
If you're nostalgic, I think you can be remade. I think if you're just good and a beloved show, you should not be touched.
So what I'm hearing is we need a live action, or we need a new gritty remake of the Jetsons.
Oh gosh, no. I don't think you can be gritty with the Jetsons. I thought you were gonna say Scooby. I was like, yeah.
Scooby, it's fine.
I could write that.
I mean,
I'd write
Jetsons
that.
is just Elon Musk's dreams at night at this point.
Please no.
Let's be real.
No, I think I don't want to imagine a gritty Jetsons, but like everything's gritty now.
Can you take Riverdale?
Well, because they did Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Riverdale.
Don't get me started.
Those are, and Teen Titans has that gritty one too, don't they?
Oh, Titans.
Okay, I haven't seen it, but I want to see it.
Going gritty with a show.
Yes.
I think it's weird.
I'm a very dark person.
We need a gritty Flintstones where the dinosaurs actually eat them. I don't know. Like, that's what I feel the pitches are. It's like, let's take Archie, right? This super chill guy, and who had a band. It was like, sugar, dun, 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 honey, honey. Like, it was very a product of its time.
Music.
It was very, it was very goofy. Like, it was legitimately goofy.
It was intended to be humorous.
And then they decided, you know what, we're going to turn it in the first, 5 minutes of the first show. It's going to become a murder mystery show, but also about school and also
raunchy.
Yeah, raunchy.
Weird.
And then we're throwing in gang wars? What?
I do not recommend any of the new gritty shows. Not just because they're really dark and they're really inappropriate.
It's because they're not good.
They are a little inappropriate. And I don't really recommend them to anyone.
Is it because they're not good?
It's because they're not good. But I think it's hard because when you take something nostalgic and you wanna make it new, the answer is not always make it gritty, make it dark.
Okay.
I love a dark show as much as a nice person, because I love the idea of people having to live with consequences, and I love fairy tale happy endings. I want to be a princess as much as the next girl, but I think that there's something that you can learn a lot from having a show that kind of takes out that just everything's good, we're rolling like 70s vibe from these old cartoons. But I think there's also a point where it's like, now you're just taking something nostalgic and
ruining it
and selling it with sex.
Well, it's like that what if that we were talking about earlier, where it was like, well, we take this and then what's the twist, right? What's the difference? And I feel, for the record, I've seen the first 2.5 seasons of Riverdale, and I like it. I think it's a cool show until they started jumping every shark imaginable. And
they do that pretty quick, because there's a point where you can't.
Suspension of disbelief is gone. Well,
not only that, you can't rely on nostalgia to sell your show. You can sell it in like the first season a little bit in the second. You can always throw it in.
Yeah,
but you need to make it its own. If it's a TV show, I think you need to develop it into its own, and I think that comes after a couple of episodes or a couple of seasons. Usually, you need to kind of like stop relying on nostalgia.
Yeah, but you need something other than what is this? Like we were talking about the writer's room concept, right? Like we were talking about I feel like a lot of those shows were just like, okay, so what if we did this cartoon? But there's sex. Like it doesn't work.
It's so, and like I really like the idea of Titans. I think it's really interesting, but that's because I always kind of imagined the characters a little bit darker.
Well, the Batman universe is darker.
The Batman
works.
universe is darker, and I think especially with the Dark Knight trilogy that I love, and the Batman v Superman movie was very dark.
It wasn't good. We're not saying it was good. She's not saying it was good.
I'm just saying the whole vibe that kind of goes with the DC universe right now is kind of a little bit darker.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense. For shows like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, I love the original. It's so funny. Salem is my spirit animal. And
we didn't need a dark gritty reboot with the daughter from Mad Men.
No, I mean, I love the actress. I think she's fantastic. But they jumped the shark. And I know people will be like, "Oh, you're Catholic. You shouldn't be watching Sabrina the Teenage Witch."
That was my next question.
It was a comedy. It's a show. It's not hurting anyone. It's not I grew up on Sabrina the. Okay, I didn't grow up on Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I watched it in like middle school and high school because I found it on YouTube or whatever, and I got into it. My parents didn't care. Like, I read Harry Potter. Like, I've seen all the movies.
Okay, not going into the Harry Potter argument.
I was never convinced that, like, ooh, witches are real. I need to start. Like, no. Like, there has to be a point where you're like, it's fake. And you know it's fake.
But that's the question as Catholics. How do we respond to... it's the perpetual argument of, oh, well, this thing... even if you know it's fake, it'll warp your mind. It'll get you into that mindset of something because television can warp your mind, which is very true.
I mean, yeah.
But I mean, it's the classic Game of Thrones argument of, if you watch Game of Thrones, you're a bad Catholic because of the things involved. Same with like Riverdale, same with Harry Potter. People can say, oh, that has promiscuous character. Usually it's promiscuous characters, or that's violent, although violence for some reason is less bad than promiscuity. We're not going into that.
I mean, gory violence is discouraged, but because Cain killed his brother Abel.
Yeah, first 5 pages of the Bible.
You want to look in the Bible, friends? Okay.
Plagues of Egypt.
There's so much just realness in the Bible that I think people gloss over because everyone wants God to just create this great and magical world. Unfortunately, he gave us free will and we messed it up. But I think that it's okay. Like, obviously, like, I'm not going to write a show that has, characters who are raunchy or, really horrible language. I love things like C.S. Lewis, Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. That's my favorite book.
Okay.
Favorite movie. We're just going to talk about the first one, okay? We're going to ignore all of the other ones.
I like
because
Prince
I
Caspian.
don't want to talk about them.
Voyage of the Dawn Treader was a
Voyage of the
shipwreck.
You know what? I cried after that movie because I was disappointed.
I was going to say train wreck, but I said shipwreck because it's on a ship.
Okay. You're no longer allowed to make jokes on the podcast, okay?
But, well, as a writer, you have an advantage, though.
Yes.
You can create things that are good without having to be this. But as a viewer, to most people who are watching,
most people don't have the creative control.
Well, over
stuff like that.
Yeah, but as a viewer,
yeah.
How do you not just is it okay? Should I watch it? Don't watch Riverdale because it's bad, not because it's raunchy. The writing is. How do you, a regular viewer, an average Joe, right, an average Tom and Mary, what should they decide to watch based on not because you'll see a show coming out and you're like, oh, I remember that as a kid, so I want to watch it. How is it okay for, I don't want to say is it okay for a Catholic, but is it okay for a Catholic to watch something even if it may have weird things in it, if they're
weird?
I don't want to say
we'll just say
if it features sin or is sin required?
People are going to sin anyways. Like, people are going to lie. People are going to, whatever. That's what creates conflict. Conflict is created through sin.
And conflict is essential.
Which is what makes a story interesting because by nature humans will sin. But what makes a story compelling is that a person can mess up. They can sin. They can face obstacles that challenge them and might make them sin or will make it harder for them to do the right thing. And it's either we see them overcome it or we see their downfall. And I think that's what sells, is this idea that someone's either going to face their downfall or they're going to rise above whatever temptation is going to exist and whatever obstacles are going to be in their path. But I think everyone obviously has their own understanding of themselves. Everyone knows, I'm not going to not go see a Marvel movie because it has language. I just don't talk with that language. I have a filter. Obviously, I'm not going to go to a movie where the main point of the movie is just that they drop F-bombs every 10 minutes. That's not I personally don't like that. I don't like it. I'm not comfortable with it. I'm not going to watch it. Everyone kind of has their own standards. I think if a movie kind of pushes you towards it, or if you feel like the movie is guiding you towards sin or is kind of directing you in that way, and that's kind of the moral of the movie is to direct you towards sin, maybe don't see it. I did not watch 50 Shades of Grey. The whole point of that movie is
it's not a movie, it's pornography.
Yes, that's the whole point, right? But the whole point of some other movie may be a really good moral message. In my advanced writing seminar currently with Professor Chris Riley, he's fantastic. We read 40-Year-Old Virgin, that script for class this week.
The Steve Carell movie?
Yeah, we read.
Really?
Which, let me tell you, the script is different.
It's a weird movie, man.
It's a weird
weird movie.
But it's actually really interesting because that movie has very Catholic and very Christian ending.
I haven't seen it.
Okay, I perused the movie. I watched it at double pace after reading the script because I didn't understand what had happened in the script. Because it was written for Steve Carell. It was written for their style of acting, which is a lot of improv and everything. But one big thing is that a lot of Catholics are like, that's a horrible movie, because the whole point is his buddies are trying to get him to lose his virginity because he's 40 years old and he's waited for marriage. And the movie ends, spoiler alert,
If you haven't seen it by now,
it's not worth it. The point is that it ends with him deciding to remain a virgin because he calls out this behavior and these ideas that they have, and he goes, well, that doesn't make he calls it out for not making
so
sense.
wholesome.
I know, but the whole point of the movie is trying to get him to lose his virginity, trying to get him to have sex outside of marriage. And that's weird. That's a super un-Catholic idea. But in the end, the answer, because all filmmakers, we seek to convey the truth. We seek to write and tell the truth. The truth that they found, all of his friends stopped sleeping around. They started developing real relationships with people. He didn't sleep with anybody. He decided, I still want to wait for marriage. And if that doesn't happen, then it doesn't. There was such a good ending that I feel like a lot of people wouldn't give that movie any attention. They consider it horribly, horribly awful of a Catholic to watch it.
Just based on the name.
But you
and the trailer.
didn't see the end. Everyone, I think, judges on the first page, and I think as Catholics, we need to read the whole book before we judge.
Yeah, but of course, this doesn't mean that a sinful film or show is fine as long as the character is redeemed at the end.
No, I don't think that's
Have some class.
I mean, don't be watching Game of Thrones. I really want to see it because I love high fantasy. I love adventure. That's totally my genre. I have never seen it because I'm not really comfortable with
90% of the things that are in it.
It's a little too raunchy. It's got some topics and themes that I'm just not comfortable with. And if the theme goes against something, if you just feel wrong or bad about watching the show, maybe just don't watch the show. I don't feel bad about the fact that I've seen Sabrina the Teenage Witch. The original, I haven't seen the one.
Or every Harry Potter 15
I
times.
don't feel bad that I own every Harry Potter movie with joy. Because I don't see that as against my faith. It's fiction. It's fantasy. It's not real. But it's entertaining. And it's a story. And there's something to be learned from the story. A lot of my writing has magic in it. I incorporate magic into my writing. I still have very, very Christian views. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe has magic. It has sorcery.
That's the fundamental element of a lot of it.
Exactly. But there is never anything
God is a talking lion.
There's never anything that's inappropriate. There's never anything that makes me feel... I mean, it's sad. There's sad parts in the movie, but I never feel like I shouldn't be watching the movie.
Yeah.
And at the end and throughout, there are themes that come up that the truth is revealed, and they're very Christian views, but they're written in a way that is meant for the mainstream.
Yeah.
And that's what I strive to do in all my writing, and I think that's what other movies do. I'm not saying every movie is perfect. I'm not saying... Hello. I'm not saying he lives by a freeway, so sometimes...
What are you talking about? This is our professional studio.
Sometimes there's traffic.
Our light turned off.
Oh, it died. Only took.
So if you had to recommend one movie,
2 episodes.
If you had to recommend one movie for our viewers, or a show, that you're like, you know what, give this a try. It may not be the most in your face Catholic thing, but you will learn, you will enjoy it for the most part. What would you recommend?
If you're older, Daredevil.
Our age?
Yeah, if you're our age, Daredevil. If you're in high school, above. Probably even like 16. I'd say 16. You can probably watch it. It's a little dark. It's kind of gritty. It's got a lot of violence. There's some language in there. Sometimes the guy's getting bandaged and he doesn't have a shirt on. But Daredevil, I think, is actually really interesting because he's a comic book character who is Catholic.
Yeah.
And it is throughout, and it is not in your face. It is done tastefully, but it's still obvious. Like
in your face because he's blind.
You're a horrible person.
We're the worst ever.
But yeah, no, like I think Daredevil would be, if you're older.
It's a good one.
It's a great one.
I
don't know if there's a TV show for like younger people off the top of my head.
Daredevil. That's your recommendation?
Daredevil.
I
think it's important that people can see that there are Catholics that are also like really cool
crime fighting
blind
lawyers.
guys, and like people who aren't Catholic really like it.
Oh yeah.
So like it
shows
him being
that Catholic is a fundamental part of the show. He goes to confession,
and nobody has a problem. No one has a problem with it.
Yeah,
because it's just a part of the story.
Yeah,
they're not offended because there's nothing to be offended about. It's a story.
Yeah, I think I would have to say if you can stand it, and if you have a decently strong stomach. Mindhunter on Netflix. It's a show about the FBI's first criminal mental. It's the people who first coined the term serial killer because they started looking into, hey, are these people born killers or are they conditioned to be killers? And it gets into the mind of some really crazy stuff.
It's pretty dark, though.
But it shows
you gotta be ready to commit to that
if
show.
you can go for it. But why I recommend it is because it really shows not just the depravity of man and how man can be debased from his godly design, from where God wants him to be, but also like how man can be affected by another person's sin and exposure to it. Because like the detectives, they're interviewing people who are like, yeah, I murdered 14 girls. It's like, and watching how they get affected by it. Also, it's the guy who voices Kristoff from Frozen, which is also the guy who voices Sven from Frozen, because spoiler, they're the same person.
I love Disney.
I would recommend that. It's just really interesting how they have to change and how they get affected by sin. So I'd say that. And I would ask another question, but we're already out of time. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching. I appreciate. If you're watching on Spotify, make sure to watch on YouTube. If you're watching YouTube, watch on Spotify. Just listen again. Maybe you'll learn more watching our visuals or just listening to our audio. If you're watching us on the treadmill, specific shout out to you this week. You are awesome. Rachel, anything to say?
Definitely hit us up. We'd love for people to comment just on Instagram, on YouTube. Let us know what you think. Post any questions you have. We'll be starting to answer those because all these are going to start being put up. So we'll be able to start answering those in the podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And as always,
keep it real.